This is just an excerpt from a full episode. If you enjoyed what you hear here, go check out other full episodes, either on YouTube or as part of the podcast feed. Enjoy! On to stranded Australian news now. The federal government says some 25,000 Australians are awaiting the chance to return, but face lengthy delays due to the cap on the number of inbound passengers allowed to enter Australia each week. Australians stranded across the world attempting to return home have been met by government agencies who have told them that in order to get home, they will probably need to draw on their superannuation so that they can afford business class tickets home, as inbound passenger caps cause ticket prices to soar and people to be repeatedly bumped off overbooked flights, unless of course they're in business class. And look, at this point, you aren't going to have a future. What with the inevitable rise and climb of climate change, the lack of COVID vaccine, the destruction of wildlife leading to an inevitable Soylent Green society, or zombies, whichever you live longest to see. So why are you being so selfish with the few pennies that you have managed to scrape together in your years? Just throw it all in now. And remember the one time that you got to fly business class because the only other option was death in a foreign land. Who doesn't love a good travel story? On top of such marvelous ideas as rob from your future self and worry about being homeless later, really, why are you worrying? That is future you's problem. Australians are also told to go to...
We were told to get funds from our family. Can we borrow money?
Which, if their family had money, they wouldn't likely be on a working holiday. Working holidays are how most working class people get to know what the inside of an office on the other side of the world looks like for 8 months before rushing a quick trip into 9 local sites that will inevitably mesh into one memory because you didn't make the time to stretch it out. Unless, like the Buddha, they are slumming it for a few years to seek enlightenment. But the Buddha would have struggled to get recognition as an essential worker. Apparently, raconteur and preachy life coach aren't skills in high demand, ever. Alternatives offered up by the Australian Embassy were to seek...
And the only answer she could give me was like, maybe you have to go to a homeless shelter.
Or crowdfund, or as it is more commonly known in America, the healthcare system. Or to steal a loaf of bread, so that they can be deported to Australia as a prisoner on a boat. At least that way they'll have a home for 6 months, and who knows, by the time they get back to Australia, there might be a vaccine, and they'll be very good at sea shanties by the time they return. Sounds to me like we're going to have some sort of immigration trade-off for our respective upcoming fruit picking seasons. But at least there, they'll have a home. Sure, it's a dingy little hostel on a farm where you are violating COVID restrictions, but it will give you a strong appreciation for that prisoner boat that they're going to put you on to get you shipped back to the colonies. And at this point, even if they were to get back, they would be forced to quarantine for 2 weeks in a hotel at their own expense. An expense, I think we have established, that they can't afford. Opposition leader in need of a better nickname, Anthony Elbow Albanese, has noted that the RAAF VIP fleet is largely sitting idle, and that Scott Morrison uses one of the fleet, and that can carry 100 passengers, and he wants to know, where the bloody hell are they? He also said, those who staff these planes, they need to get up their flying hours. If people aren't using the aircraft, they'll be flying around empty, which is, in my opinion, a very negative take on the whole thing. The planes might be chartered to fly emergency lobsters to China, Japan, Hong Kong, Singapore, and the United Arab Emirates. Now this seafood deal was worth $800 million, so maybe, if Australia's farmers were interested in footing the bill to have our guys come home, maybe in exchange for a little bit of work after they pay for their own hotel quarantine, of course. After all, our PM likes to say,
chosen the topic of the best form of welfare and it has the obvious answer is a job.
But Albo says that the federal government had ultimate responsibility to provide quarantine and bring home people safely, which flies in the face of the Liberal government's brave stance earlier this year when they said that they didn't think they had a duty of care to Australians. Part of the problem here is the restrictions on numbers going into hotel quarantine a week being limited. though if hotels or other options were to become available, they could open up the numbers. WA Premier and shoe-in for President of WA if it ever succeeds, Mark McGowan, has opened up the possibility of maybe opening up Rottnest Island as a new source of hosting returnees, if the numbers were to open up, becoming the cutest prison in Australia. While we are discussing hopeless Australians who need funding assistance, the Australian Associated Press has said it needs to consider crowdfunding. The Associated Press only recently found new life after it stopped being funded by the news groups who pay to keep it running, presumably because they were of the mindset, why pay for news sources to get information when they could just make up all their own stories and have nobody contradict them. Crowdfunding is an interesting choice though, for a news organisation, given the reason they have no money in the first place is people refuse to pay for newspapers.